Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 16 team selection where I've already used one free transfer and I'm planning on using my second and maybe third very soon. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, let's jump straight into my Game Week 16 team selection where I currently have 2 free transfers and 3.6 million in the bank. If you follow me on social media, you will have seen that I already made a transfer on Monday evening, which we will move on to. And honestly, it's not something I usually do. I don't really like early transfers because I often think I would regret them. My plans change throughout the week. You get injuries, pieces of news, which might change that. But I just felt like all of my future moves barely had any money in the bank. And therefore, at the moment, whilst it seems like I've got lots of money, 0.1 means quite a lot for my future moves. So I decided to move early. And as of right now, and I don't want to jinx it, on Thursday morning of me recording this, I'm still very happy that I moved on Monday night. So we'll move on to the transfer that I made when we get onto the midfield. That's a little hint for you. But first, let's discuss the defense. And like I said, I do have that 3.6 million in the bank, and I'll discuss where I plan on using that. This team is currently rated at 95% and is projected to get 68.4 points by Fantasy Football Hub. If you want to get 30% off and a 30-day free trial, use the link down below in the description so that you can plan ahead, get access to all of the data that I use in these videos, and much more. So, starting off with the goalkeeper situation, I've got Sanchez and Fabianski at the moment, and as I've said for a little while here, I do foresee there being an issue with Sanchez. I actually don't see an issue with the Chelsea defence. I think Chelsea's defence is very underrated. I think with the fixtures they've got coming up, despite the fact that they make so many individual errors, I still think there are a lot of clean sheets there for Chelsea. I just worry for two reasons. Firstly, believe it or not, Robert Sanchez is on 4 yellow cards. And therefore, if he picks up one more yellow card, so he gets to 5 yellow cards before game week 20, then he will pick up a 1-match suspension. So that would be my first concern, that he just misses a game due to 5 yellow cards, which is ridiculous for a goalkeeper. But the next issue is I just don't think he's very good. He's not good with the ball at his feet. He's not a particularly fantastic shot stopper. I don't really see what Maresca loves about him. I suppose the good thing for him is that Jorgensen's not necessarily one of those goalkeepers where it's like, like Kelleher at Liverpool. It's like they are way too good to be a number 2. It almost does feel like Jorgensen isn't a massive upgrade on Sanchez, and therefore there is still some part of me which thinks, do you know what, even if Sanchez isn't perfect, he will continue to be the number 1 for Chelsea. So that would be my only concern coming up, is that I think I might need to replace Sanchez for one of those reasons. If I do need to, oh well. I don't really want to use a goalkeeper transfer, but if he loses his place or he gets suspended and I don't feel like I can rely on Fabianski, then it's not the end of the world. I'll just transfer Sanchez to someone like Henderson, who is currently 4.4 million going into a nice fixture run. You've got Verbruggen. I could even upgrade him to someone like Alisson or Raya if I can find the funds. So I'm not too stressed about the goalkeeper position. As long as Sanchez keeps his place, I will absolutely keep him in my team because, like I said, I do see clean sheets for Chelsea over this run. So yeah, that's the situation right now. This week I will be playing Sanchez because I think Bournemouth away is a tougher fixture and I think that Chelsea are a better defence than West Ham. When we move on to the defence, as I've said for a little while now, this is absolutely where I do need a transfer to be made. At least one, in all honesty, preferably about 3. And that's not even taking into account the issue that we have surrounding Gabriel. So on Gabriel, we still don't have an update. A lot of people are hypothesizing that it was a concussion injury or a concussion protocol, and that they didn't want to say it was concussion because then we knew he would be out for the 10 days. But Arteta in his press conference did suggest that it was a muscle injury. So I don't actually know here. I wouldn't be surprised if Gabriel's absolutely fine and ready to play at the weekend, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Gabriel's out for 3 months and we just don't know anything about it. There have been numerous reports that Gabriel is training indoors, and he's posted a couple of things on his Instagram stories which suggests that he's not that far away. So I think the plan for me at the moment is to keep Gabriel, but unless we get a definitive update that he's definitely fit and available for the weekend, which I don't think we'll get, my plan is to keep him, but make sure that I have a perfectly good, viable defender to come on if he misses out again. So that's the plan as things stand. But I absolutely understand, like, if your defense is a bit of a mess and you want Trent and your only route to Trent is selling Gabriel or something like that, or even Van Dijk, who's a great option, then I can understand why you'd want to do it. But for me, Gabriel still remains the best defender in the game. We've seen how good Arsenal are from set pieces, and we've seen how good their defense are in general. So I really want to keep Gabriel. But it is becoming a bit of an issue that he's my only real defender that I like at the moment, and he's the only one that's not playing, and because of this injury/concussion issue. So Let's wait and see if we do get some sort of update, not from Arteta, of course, but from some of the journalists that we know or some of the in-the-know accounts on social media, and we might get a bit of an update. But as of right now, the plan is to keep Gabriel, and I won't be selling him. And honestly, that's mainly because I have other issues in my defense. This week, I will not be selling Aït-Nouri, and I'm perfectly happy starting him. I thought he was incredibly attacking in game week 15, and he was unlucky not to come away with more in that game. And so I'm very, very happy to play him against Ipswich at home. But then the other three defenders, I think they could all conceivably be sold this week. So Leif Davis, I have no issue with this week, by the way. Wolves away, he's actually got a decent fixture. We saw that Wolves were very, very vulnerable. So I feel like Leif Davis could get an attacking return. Do I expect a clean sheet away at Molineux? Probably not. But it's not an awful game for him. The issue that I have with Leif Davis is moving forward. You can see a few of his fixtures there. He's got Newcastle, Arsenal, Chelsea, Fulham coming up. There isn't a single game, apart from maybe one over the next sort of 8 to 10, that I desperately want to play Leif Davis. So it's not that I dislike him. You guys know how much I love him as an asset. He's got a lot of attacking potential, but he does play for Ipswich, who aren't a particularly good defence, and there aren't many upcoming fixtures that I'd want to play him. So he is on the chopping block for that reason. Rico Lewis, believe it or not, he's a player that I want to hold on to. And the only reason for that is, as much as you want to say he's been disappointing, and believe me, I know that myself, he is still a City defender for less than 5 million, with great upcoming fixtures, that seems relatively nailed on and has played a lot of games. And with the issues and injuries that City have in their defence, it just makes Rico Lewis even more likely to start. And clearly Pep does trust him in a number of positions. He can play left-back inverting. He can play right-back inverting. He can play an out-and-out midfield. He's even played on the right wing this season. So with all of the issues that they've got, he's clearly a player that Pep trusts. And as much as City have been woeful recently, in the last 6 game weeks, they are 18th for expected goals conceded. They are not defending well. You would expect that to change, at least improve slightly coming up. And with the fixtures that they've got, I see more opportunity for me to play Rico Lewis in the upcoming fixtures than I do someone like a Leif Davis or a Van den Berg. So right now, and I'm not saying I'm going to keep him for the next 10 game weeks, but right now, if I'm to sell a defender this week, which I'm going to, Rico Lewis doesn't feel like a priority. But of course, he is suspended. And that's the thing. Like, I can't rely on him this week, which is a bit of an issue if Gabriel might be out. So that's Davis and Lewis. I'm probably leaning more towards selling Davis, but I could also just sell Van den Berg instead. The thing with Van den Berg is, ideally, your 5th defender, you don't really need to call on them very often. And therefore, if you don't really need to call on them very often, with all of the upcoming things we've got coming up, it might make sense to just have the cheapest possible option as your 5th defender. Like, because if I sell Van den Berg, then essentially Davis becomes my 5th defender. And then I'm overspending by 0.5. Which moves me on to the big discussion point, which is, of course, the introduction of the assistant manager chip. Now, if you've missed out, there are a couple of videos on YouTube you can go and watch, which will explain this in more detail. But basically, the mystery chip has been announced as an assistant manager chip. I will release a video closer to the time where you can play it, which is game week 24. But essentially, across a consecutive 3 game week period, you pick a manager and a team to back. And when that team win games, score goals, and keep clean sheets, they accumulate points. And you can use transfers to change the manager and team around that you're backing. But the important thing is, and why it's relevant here, is you have to use your own existing budget to buy essentially that manager and team, and that will range anywhere from 0.5 million to 1.5 million. Why I think that's important in what decision I might make this week is I just think I would like to sell Van den Berg and have a stronger bench. But now knowing that I need to free up 0.5 to 1.5 million in order to utilize the assistant manager chip, every single 0.5 million goes a long way. And so I'm just almost wasting that 0.5 million now if I sell Van den Berg rather than Davis. But the issue is, if I sell Leif Davis and keep Van den Berg, i.e. keeping as much money in the bank as possible for this upcoming chip and future moves, if Gabriel does miss out, I will get Van den Berg off the bench against Chelsea this week. So really, I need to try and find out more information about if I expect Gabriel to be fit and available. Because if he is, I'll discuss the Liverpool defender I'm planning on buying in a second. It would be Aït-Nouri, Gabriel, and a Liverpool defender. I should ideally not really need to rely on a defender this week, right? I've got Rodgers as my first sub for the attackers. I shouldn't need, hopefully, fingers crossed, the backup defender, in which case I can just have Van den Berg and sell Davis. So it really is sort of hinging on the fitness of Gabriel as to whether I sell Davis or Van den Berg. So with all of that really confusing explanation out the way, and I do apologise, that was probably awfully difficult to follow, The plan at the moment, because we don't have a definitive update on Gabriel, is to sell Vandenberg, because I really don't want him coming off the bench this week, and I actually feel like Davis could have a pretty good game, and it still leaves me money in the bank, this planned move, which is to do Vandenberg to Trent. Like I said, that could be Leaf Davis to Trent, which would leave me 1.1 million in the bank, which is a much more flexible position to be in, or it could also be Van Dijk that comes in. Now, I have said all week, and I still maintain, that Trent is the better pick than Van Dijk when you consider there's only 0.6 million between them. I feel like the difference between Trent and Van Dijk really ideally needs to be like 1 million plus for me to sit here and say I think Van Dijk is a better pick. And I am aware of all of the strengths of Van Dijk, by the way. He can score headers. He's got perfect expected minutes. And going into this busy period and the upcoming double game week that Liverpool have, having Van Dijk, who is nailed on for every game, is very useful. Like, if Trent misses 2 of the next 10, that's not ideal. Like, really, you need him to start most games. But there's a couple of things. I think Trent's attacking threat will outweigh any potential benchings that he might get. And I also think his expected minutes are a lot better than a lot of people are suggesting. After those first 3 games of the season where he played around sort of 70 to 80 minutes, he went on a run of playing 90 minutes of 6 of the next 7, I believe it was. His minutes were really good right up until when he got injured. So, yes, there is the risk of when Bradley comes back and Gomez playing right back. Quansah has shown he can do it too. I still just think that Trent will start pretty much every game, and I think his minutes will be okay. And honestly, early subs aren't the end of the world, especially if he banks the clean sheet and then they concede after that. An early sub can actually be to his advantage. So yeah, I think the plan at the moment is to go Trent. The only additional benefit now of going for Van Dijk, as I just spoke about, is we've got this assistant manager chip where we need to free up money. So if you save 0.6 going for Van Dijk over Trent, that might be the money required for you to go out there and activate your assistant manager chip. So these are the things we need to think about. Basically, if you want me to simplify it and you're somehow still watching this ramble, I will be bringing in a Liverpool defender, Trent or Van Dijk, for one of Davis or Vandenberg. I just need to think about, do I definitely want to take the risk on Trent ahead of Van Dijk? And do I want to sell Davis or Vandenberg? How important is it for me to have, firstly, a good sub this week, but also to leave money in the bank for future moves and also the assistant manager chip? Hopefully that is clear. For now, I'll leave the team as you can see it on your screen where Trent is in for Vandenberg. Let's now move on to the midfield. So guys, moving on to the midfield, and you can see my transfer. We had to say goodbye to Bryan Mbeumo, and I said hello to Enzo Fernandez. And again, that was made on Monday night when Enzo was 4.9 million. And let me try and discuss that. I mean, I have discussed it a little bit in this week's videos anyway. But the first thing is, I just wanted a Liverpool defender. I look at how good Liverpool's defence has been. I look at the upcoming fixtures. I look at the fact that they've got an upcoming double, probably in Game Week 24 or 25. I don't think this is necessarily a perfect entry point for Liverpool, right? They've got Fulham and Tottenham in the next 2. But beyond that, I just know that I want one. So why not use this opportunity now when we've got a really cheap asset we can bring into midfield that I think is performing at a high standard? Get a Liverpool player in place whilst I've got the free transfers. It just made a lot of sense to me. And I don't think Bryan Mbeumo is a bad pick. I think he's perfectly fine to hold. He's got a great record at Stamford Bridge, by the way. He's on penalties. He's on corners. He's got 90 minutes every game. And going into this busy period, that's amazing. My issue wasn't with Mbeumo. I think he's fantastic. My issue was I wanted a Liverpool defender, and that is the only place that I could free up some funds. Now, Enzo Fernandez, there is a lot of risk associated with him, as we've discussed this week. If Lavia isn't fit and available, Enzo almost definitely plays in a deeper role. And also, he's not nailed on to start every single game, especially the midweek games coming up. There's a chance that he's rotated. So yes, I've brought in a player that might play defensive mid and might not play every game. But the flip side of that is across the last 4, he's played 90 in all of them. He's been playing in basically a number 10 role alongside Cole Palmer. He takes all set pieces pretty much in the in-swinging fashion with his right foot, so from the left-hand side. And he's playing in one of the best attacks in the league with sensational upcoming fixtures, and he rotates almost perfectly with Morgan Rogers. There is so much to like about this man, and I was already very happy with the transfer, but then when I saw that we're going to need to free up potentially up to 1.5 million for this new assistant manager chip, it made me even happier that I made the move, because I think we are going to have to bring in some real budget enablers in and around when we plan on playing the chips. So I just think for now, I am perfectly happy with Enzo Fernandez as what is probably my 4th midfielder. The only other reason that I thought this was absolutely fine to do is a lot of my future plans involved potentially, and I'm saying I'll definitely do this, potentially upgrading Morgan Rogers to become a better midfielder. And in that situation, Morgan Rogers' replacement, let's say that's someone like, I'm looking at maybe Eze. If he becomes Eze becomes my 4th midfielder, and then Enzo Fernandez is essentially my 8th attacker, so he drops to the bench. So I think for all of those reasons, it just made sense to me to make the move early, get on him as early as possible. And as I said in the sort of defender section, a lot of my future moves include having 0.1, 0.2 in the bank in terms of wiggle room. And so 0.1 million at the moment, it is really, really important. So I don't usually move early, but that was the reason. Obviously, Chelsea are playing tonight. I don't even know if the squad's been announced, but I don't expect Enzo to travel. And if he does travel, I don't think he'll play. So I don't think that's a concern. And so, yeah, I made the moves for that reason. But I'm not sitting here saying that Enzo's a game breaker. You've got to bring him in. I'm expecting him to match Saka, Palmer and Salah. None of those things are true. He's 5 million, but he facilitates so much. And we have seen in the past that cheap assets can deliver above their price. So for now, I'm perfectly happy having Enzo in my team. And yeah, he just covers Rodgers nicely. Like Rodgers is on 4 yellows. I think Enzo's on 1. So if Rodgers is to pick up a suspension, given the fixtures that Enzo has, he just covers everything that I need really, really nicely. So yeah, I'm not bringing him in expecting him to deliver me double-digit returns or even get what he's done recently, which is something like 6 returns in 5 weeks. I'm not expecting any of that. But hopefully that makes sense as to why I look to bring him into my team. And I'm perfectly happy to own him now for the next few game weeks at the very, very least. The only real negative about this, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will realise this, is this blocks me from Nicholas Jackson. This could be the big mistake, but also, when I say mistake, worst case scenario, I just have to take out Sanchez, which probably isn't a bad thing. So if I decide, wow, Nicholas Jackson is firing on all cylinders, he's unbelievable over the next 3, and I'm just desperate to bring him in. Well, yeah, I could sell Enzo firstly, which I don't think I'd do, but I'd probably just sell Sanchez. Sanchez down to Henderson, like I said, for Crystal Palace's really nice fixture run, and I'll just buy Jackson. It does require 1 extra transfer, but the idea of 1 extra transfer or 1 here, I think we blow out of proportion sometimes. It's not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world. So I felt like it was a move worth making, basically. I'll leave it there because it sounds like I'm desperately trying to justify why I brought in Enzo, but I just wanted to explain to you guys because it might look like a slightly weird transfer on the face of it, but I think it makes a lot of sense, which means that, yeah, Enzo and Rodgers are basically rotating as my 4th midfielder at the moment. Most of the time I play Enzo, but there are some upcoming fixtures, like Rodgers plays against Leicester in, I think it's like 2021. He's got Leicester at home. He can come in for that fixture when Enzo has Crystal Palace away. Then there's a week where I think Enzo's got like Man City or Liverpool or something like that, and I can rotate Rodgers in. So the rotation between the pair of them just works really well. And so they'll be my 4th/5th midfielder. And then the other 3 are just Saka, Palmer, Salah. All 3 of them playing at home this week. In fact, by the way, all of my starting 11 are playing at home, as we'll see in a second. They're all conceivably really good captaincy options this week. I am probably, to my own detriment, not going to consider Bukayo Saka, despite the fact that, by the way, that man is in a ridiculous run of form. He got a brace and an assist in the Champions League. He's performing incredibly well. I just back Palmer and Salah as having slightly greater goal threat. And I'm aware Saka just scored 2 goals, by the way. But on the face, I just think Palmer and Salah, on a consistent basis, have more goal threat. Saka has more assist threat. So I will always back the goal scorers wherever I can. I think if you're looking at fixture, the fixture is much better for Cole Palmer. Brentford are not very good away. They are a much weaker defence than Fulham. But I just think that Chelsea are a little bit more inconsistent in terms of you never know exactly what version of Palmer and Chelsea will turn up. Whereas Salah and Liverpool, especially under Slot, they've been super consistent. You know that Salah will get chances. You know that they will have a good performance. But Fulham are just so good defensively. Like they're 6th for expected goals conceded this season. Like they're just by all accounts a very solid team. So that worries me a little bit. Like I could see this being 1-0 or 2-0 to Liverpool, but if that's the case, I'm backing Salah to get one of those goals. So at the moment, it's just out of almost don't doubt the Egyptian king. I've got the armband on Salah, but I do think that fixture-wise, the Palmer one makes a lot more sense. Although Chelsea don't have a great record against Brentford if you buy into that, and I could just see Thomas Frank just sitting in really well against Chelsea. Like if you look at Brentford's performances this season, they don't often get pumped like 4 or 5-0, right? I think the worst was like 3 they conceded to Spurs. They conceded 2 to Liverpool and I think 2 to City as well, 2 to Manchester United. Like they will probably lose this by 2 or 3 goals, but I don't think they're going to go and get pumped by Chelsea. But for the same things, I don't think that Fulham will also have that against Liverpool. So yeah, let's wait and see. Basically, I'm very happy with the midfield now. No, I'm not expecting Enzo to break the game or get me 10 plus points every week, but I hope he can deliver. Even if it's an assist from a set piece, at his price, that's more than enough. So Enzo, Saka, Palmer, Salah will be my midfield. Decision to be made between Palmer and Salah for captaincy. Let's look at the front 3. So guys, moving on to the front 3, and honestly, I'm just very, very happy with it this week. I know moving forward, I might have some potential issues, as we'll discuss in a second, but this week and also next week, I've just got 3 penalty takers, 3 talismanic players with good expected minutes, all playing at home, and they've got good fixtures again, as I said, next week as well. I just don't foresee me needing a transfer right now unless there are any issues that crop up towards the deadline. But yeah, João Pedro against Crystal Palace at home, Cunha against Ipswich at home, and Isak against Leicester at home. On João Pedro, he's been very disappointing. I just think at his price, he's absolutely fine. If across the next 3 against Crystal Palace, West Ham, Brentford, he continues to disappoint, doesn't get involved in the attacking returns, then yeah, there's absolutely a case to be made for selling him to someone like Chris Wood if you've got the funds, or even going for someone like a Jamie Vardy, who's been performing at an incredibly high level. But as of right now, I still think all of the reasons that I said João Pedro was great still stand, and I do think the returns will be coming for him. So yeah, it's a decent fixture against Crystal Palace this week, although they've been definitely performing better. I'm perfectly happy having him. And then West Ham and Brentford after that are 2 fantastic fixtures for our attackers. So yeah, João Pedro is absolutely fine. And then Cunha and Isak, really happy to have the pair of them. I know a lot of people this week are trying to decide, should you sell Cunha for Isak, which is a very tricky position to be in because, yes, Isak is a better asset. I'd rather have Isak. But it also feels like an incredibly luxury move, selling Cunha before Ipswich and Leicester for Isak before Leicester and Ipswich. So, yeah, basically, they've both got Leicester and Ipswich across the next 2. So they will both be staying in my team for the next 2 weeks, unless they, of course, pick up an injury. Beyond that, the fixtures definitely turn for both of them. So they've actually got very similar fixtures. Cunha's got Ipswich, Leicester, United, Spurs, Forest. Isak's got Leicester, Ipswich, Aston Villa, United, Spurs. So it's basically the same set of 5 fixtures. I definitely think there's more chance of me keeping Isak, though, because first, he's a better asset. I feel like Newcastle are a better attack. But also, after that spell of 3 fixtures for Newcastle, they actually really improved. So let me just pull up Isak's fixtures here. So after that 3 of Aston Villa, United, Spurs, it's Wolves, Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham. It's a much better run after that. Whereas for Cunha, and by the way, Cunha can score against difficult opposition. He showed that earlier in the season. But it's United, Spurs, Forest, then it's Newcastle, Chelsea, Arsenal, Villa, Liverpool, Bournemouth, Fulham, Everton. And even the Bournemouth, Fulham, Everton games, by the way, those are 3 defences that are really good this season for expected goals conceded. So basically, I'm going to definitely keep the pair of them for the next 2 fixtures. But beyond that, if there is one of them to be sold, unless Isak picks up another injury, it will be Cunha that is sold. And I'll probably just hold Isak through. So I guess what I'm saying with the front 3 at the moment is there's no plans to sell them for the next 2 to 3 weeks. But the first player that I do probably plan on moving on is likely to be Matheus Cunha. And then if João Pedro disappoints, it might be that I move him on too. Nicholas Jackson is the one that obviously stands out that I don't own as things stand. And I can't own him, like I said, unless I sell one of my 3 Chelsea. I think the only reason that I would really regret blocking that 3rd Chelsea and wanting Jackson is if Isak picks up an injury. Because if Isak gets injured, the very obvious move is just go for Jackson instead. And at that point, yeah, I will have to sell Sanchez to be able to do that. And I don't have an issue with that. I suppose that then gives me a triple up on the Chelsea attack, which is something that I'll need to think about. The other player that I actually really want, who I'm not seeing discussed too much at the moment, is Mateta. Mateta's the one that stands out to me. We still think he's on penalties for Palace. Palace's run of fixtures coming up is really nice. He's not particularly expensive. I think he's at 7.2 million now, I believe. So for Cunha to Mateta looks really, really nice. If I need to downgrade Isak to free up some funds, Mateta looks really good. And then, of course, someone like a Chris Wood continues to perform really consistently. You've got some of those more difficult fixtures out the way now. He's an option for me as well. So in terms of players that might come in, Jackson, Wood, and Mateta are probably the 3 that I'm looking at the moment. And of course, Erling Haaland as well, right? I can't disregard Erling Haaland. I just think, for a couple of reasons, Saka, Palmer, Salah are so good at the moment, as is someone like an Alexander Isak. I'd much rather to have that 3 combination with a really good defence and Isak than bring in Haaland for Isak, have to lose one of my premium midfielders, and have to lose one of Trent or Gabriel, potentially both. Like, that's what you're looking at to get Erling Haaland in. Or you just sell Salah, and why would you sell Salah? And I just don't see why I'd rather have Haaland than Salah, considering the price difference, but also considering how good Salah has been. And Liverpool have an upcoming double game week in 24 or 25. So even if you ignore the extra point I'm about to make, having Haaland doesn't make sense. But then consider that with this new assistant manager chip, you've got to free up potentially up to 1.5 million from your budget. Imagine trying to own Haaland and a good team and freeing up 1.5 million. I just don't see how you get him in your team. And in all honesty, I don't want him anyway. Like, City are really struggling at the moment. He missed another big chance in the Champions League. They lost 2-0 to Juventus. Juventus aren't a team that are flying at the moment this season. It's not good from City at the moment. So yeah, for that reason, I'm probably not going to own Erling Haaland for the foreseeable future. So this is the team. I've only actually made 1 transfer. So remember that. The only transfer I've actually made is Enzo in for Mbeumo. I've not made the Trent move yet. but I'm 99% sure that Trent will be coming in. I just need to decide, do I sell Vandenberg or do I sell Davis? And because Trent's not looking close to being ready to rise in price, I probably don't need to make that decision yet. That is 11 players playing at home, 6 penalty takers, all of the major assets that I would want covered. It should be a decent week. Let's now move on to how that looks for the team moving forward and potential future moves that I might end up making. So guys, I thought to end the video, I would just jump over to Fantasy Football Hub and show you how my team looks for future game weeks and some possible moves that I might be considering. Obviously, a lot can change. All you need is one injury to one key player and everything is up in the air. Let's say, hopefully it doesn't happen, one of Salah, Saka or Palmer got injured. None of these plans would be at all applicable anymore, and you would end up probably selling that asset instead. So yeah, let's discuss it though at this early stage. And as I said, if you do want to check out Fantasy Football Hub, if you want to plan ahead yourself or look at some of the stats from upcoming players or do player comparisons, they've got so much on their website. It really supports me if you check out the link down below in the description. You can get a 30-day free trial at the moment, so you can use it for the entirety of December. See if you enjoy it over this busy period. And if you don't enjoy it, just don't sign up. But if you do, then you can go on to get 30% off. Again, there will be a link down below in the description. So this is how the team will look for Game Week 16 if I make the move to bring in Trent for Vandenberg. Obviously, if I make it for Leif Davis instead, then I, of course, have more money in the bank. That's something to consider. And Enzo Fernandez is in there as per my transfer that I've already made. So let's move on to Game Week 17. The idea in 17 would be to ideally roll the free transfer, right? Because I've just brought in Trent. Hopefully, Gabriel is fit at this point. If Aït-Nouri doesn't get suspended, which is, I really need him to not pick up that yellow card again, he's got Leicester away, which is a great fixture. My midfield is, of course, the 3 premiums. Plus, I have Enzo against Everton, who, by the way, that's not a great fixture, but I would hope that he would play, and I'm okay having him. And that front 3 is Isak, Cunha, and João Pedro. Yes, they're all away from home, but they're all fantastic fixtures. If Aït-Nouri were to be suspended, then I have Davis against Newcastle at home on the bench, or Lewis against Aston Villa away. So, no, it's not a perfect situation defensively, but it's also not a huge issue. So the plan is to roll. If I am able to roll the transfer in Game Week 17, that would mean going into Game Week 18, I'd have 3 free transfers, right? Because I would have 2 available to me in 17. If I roll, I'd have 3 going into 18. And going into 18, there's a couple of things on my mind. The first being, I don't like my 2 Wolves assets, right? From there on in, like if we look at their fixtures, they've got United, Spurs, Forest, Newcastle, Chelsea. Beyond that, it still doesn't look great, especially Aït-Nouri. Like Cunha you could hold, but Aït-Nouri you definitely don't want moving forward. Like clean sheets just aren't there anyway, but especially with that upcoming fixture on, it's just not going to happen. Now, I don't have to sell Aït-Nouri in this week because I do have Rico Lewis, assuming he's still starting at this point, against Everton at home, which is a really good fixture. So there is the potential to just not use a defender transfer. But if I have 3 anyway, there is a possibility that I choose to do that. The only issue that I've got is there aren't any defenders that I desperately want to bring in around Game Week 18. Like Munoz does stand out to me of Crystal Palace, but he's on 4 yellows. And that that threshold won't be changed to 10 yellow cards until Game Week 20. So I'm bringing in a player that might get suspended straight away. But let's say that is the move that I make because I think that's the most likely. Would it be Aït-Nouri or Leif Davis? I'd probably sell Aït-Nouri because he's more expensive. And also, like, I kind of back Leif Davis to get attacking returns more often because he's on set pieces than Aït-Nouri. I'd probably need to sell either of them. The only other option is Kerkez. And could I see myself using 2 transfers here? By the way, I'm going to butcher his name, Hausen, the centre-back. If Senesi stays out, he's looked very good. He's had a couple of chances. But would I go Kerkez or would I go Munoz? I'm going to say Kerkez at this point, just because he's got a really decent home fixture and he's not got that risk of suspension. But I do have my eye on Munoz as well. And then the other thing I need to decide is, do I want to sell Cunha at this stage? Like, Man United at home is not a terrible fixture, but I am eyeing up someone like Mateta, right? Bournemouth and Southampton in back-to-back games. The Bournemouth game's not ideal, but Southampton at home after that, then Chelsea at home, and then he goes on to a really nice fixture run after that against Leicester, against West Ham. So maybe I go a little bit early on Mateta. That set of moves at the moment leaves me with 0.2 million in the bank. And this is what I was talking about in terms of making that Enzo move early. I knew that I would, with future moves, maybe not have the most money available to me. So I'll make those transfers. But like I said, if I think Rico Lewis is going to start, maybe I don't need to end up making that move anyway. But that will be how the team looks for 18. So I would then still have one free transfer available. So going into game week 19, the idea is I would have 2 free transfers available at this stage. But I shouldn't really desperately need to make a transfer. So I've got the choice. Do I play João Pedro or Rodgers? I'd probably play João Pedro in this game, but that's a possible option for me. Isak against Man United, I've got no issue with. Mateta would have a great game here. The back line is looking super strong. Unless I have issues in the team, which of course is always a possibility, I'd be able to roll, which would mean the idea is going into game week 20, it would be 3 free transfers. At this stage, I think Rodgers would come in for me probably instead of João Pedro or Mateta. I think it'd be instead of João Pedro just because Arsenal was so good. And so the team would look something like this. It's not perfect this week in terms of fixtures, but again, in terms of transfers, is there anything I'm that desperate for? No. Now, I will probably make transfers over this period because someone will be disappointing, someone will get injured. But I guess the point is what I'm showing you is by making the Trent move, I've got Trent and Gabriel who I can play every week. Then I need to make another defender transfer at some point to bring in Kirkes or Munoz. And then I probably need to transfer out Davis or Lewis as well, just to beef up that defence even more. But in terms of the rotation and players that I have as my 8 attackers, the 8 attackers are perfectly fine for now. And Mateta coming in for Cunha just gives me a player with better fixtures. And then, yeah, probably around this time, it's something like, I don't know, like Leif Davis out for... It probably would be Munoz at this point, especially if it's ahead of Leicester, West Ham, Brentford. So I make that transfer. And then my back line probably looks more consistently like Trent, Munoz, Gabriel. The only thing that I could foresee changing this massively is, like I said, if Sanchez loses his place and or I want Nicholas Jackson, then maybe that is a set of moves that I look to make. So the only thing then is around game week 24, the assistant managership comes into play. And of course, I'd have around 0 in the bank at this stage. I need to free up some money. The team doesn't have an obvious place to free up money at this point other than Isak or Mateta. So it might be that I bring in Mateta only to then sell him immediately. And at that stage, you might say, do you just not buy Mateta? So around 18, when I was looking to buy Mateta, do I instead look to keep Cunha for a little bit and then maybe sell him for a cheaper forward, such as, and it would have to be someone maybe as cheap as someone like a Jamie Vardy or someone at that below 6. Maybe Eva Nilsson is the shout, right? Rather than Mateta, I go for Eva Nilsson, who's not got an awful run of fixtures, right? We'll just look at Kirkes here, but Palace, Fulham, Everton, Chelsea, Newcastle. Maybe he's the one I go for to free up the funds. There are lots of things that I'm thinking about, but if I go back to my team in 16, 11 players playing at home. In fact, we can just go back and you can view it like this. 11 players playing at home, all really good fixtures. I've got all of the major bases covered. I'm pretty happy with the team at the moment. This would still leave me with 1 free transfer as well. So if I decide I want to remove Rico Lewis or Leif Davis as well, I have the free transfer to do so. Or if, let's say, Gabriel is out injured and we have that confirmed, maybe I do sell Gabriel for someone like Virgil van Dijk. So there we go. That's the team as things stand. As I said, check out Fantasy Football Hub, link down below, and let me know what you think of the team. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 16 team selection with a little bit of planning ahead to future weeks and a small discussion around the assistant managership as well. If you did enjoy today's video, please do remember to smash that like button. If you've got to this point and you've not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. I massively appreciate it. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.